Hey everybody, welcome to session 3.2 of my FileMaker series. This is a continuation of yesterday's session where we started working on a contract management database. So only a couple of quick housekeeping things for today. There is a link in the chat as well as in the comments and in the video description to a Dropbox folder where you can find the 3 cover sheets for the agreements that we're going to be working with today. There's a LORT agreement in there, a standard design agreement, and the project only agreement. So today we're going to work with those 3 things. You're going to want to use the images that are in there. You'll see there's PDFs and there's also images in that folder. The PDFs are really just for your reference. We're going to be using the ping image files for everything we do today. Only other thing to keep in mind, if you are a dark mode user on your Mac like I am, I would recommend that you switch over to light mode just for today. There are some things that we're going to be doing with some scripts where it's easier to see some of the text when you're in light mode. They still haven't quite updated dark mode to be able to show up well enough. So, okay, let's go ahead and dive right in. So you're looking right now at what we left off with yesterday. Yesterday we created this data entry page. And that's really all we did. We left our client's thing kind of ugly. We're going to be making this client's table a little prettier tomorrow. With tomorrow's lesson, today we're really going to be focusing on getting this information that we've put into this contract into cover sheet form. So yesterday we looked at what those cover sheets look like. Whoops. We looked at the SDA cover sheet, which looks like this, and all of the fields most of the fields that we set up yesterday correspond directly to what's on this SDA. So today we're going to be creating that, and then we're also going to look at some of these other agreements that might have other fields on them that we might need to add some more data for. Some of the things we'll be able to use multiple of, other ones we won't be able to. So let's go ahead and start out by creating a new layout. To do that, I'm going to do Command-Shift-L to open my layout manager, or I'm going to go to File, Manage Layouts, and it's right there. So you can see yesterday we made this folder for those old layouts. We have a data entry folder. I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder, and I'm going to call it USA Cover Sheets. And then maybe move the archive below that. Oops. And I'm going to make a new layout. And I'm going to call this SDA cover sheet. So that's what we'll start with. SDA stands for Standard Design Agreement. So we're going to do that cover sheet first. So yesterday we played around with using the computer layout for this. Today we're going to be making a printed layout. So I'm going to choose Printer, and then I'm going to choose Report. If you watched some of my earlier videos, you can make labels, you can do all this kind of stuff. This is where having this database of all your clients comes in really handy, because if you did want to print, let's say, mailing labels for all of your clients, you can see now really quickly how we could start doing that without having to have Microsoft Word or Excel or anything like that involved. So I'm going to call it SDA cover sheet, printer type, report, continue. Now, for the most part, on these next few screens you're going to go through, we're going to uncheck all of the default options. All these things are powerful and useful for different tasks, but for what we're doing today, we don't want any of them. So I'm unchecking that. I'm not moving any fields over to my layout yet. I'm basically just wanting to create a layout that is completely blank with no information on it. Nothing in the header, nothing in the footer, not creating any special scripts, and just clicking Finish. And so now you see it's given us a layout that is just a tiny little body section here, and that's really all there is to it. So what I want to do is I want to get this layout to be the same size as a standard 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. The 3 images that are in that Dropbox folder that I put in the description, these are 8.5 by 11 ping images of the cover sheets. The reason I'm using the ping images instead of the PDFs is that the union has secured these PDFs so that you can't, you can fill in information but you can't edit the text, which makes sense. But that creates problems for some PDF programs when I'm exporting and printing from FileMaker. I ran into some issues there. So by just using the cover sheets as images, and especially as a ping where it's kind of pretty much lossless, we're able to not have to worry about any of those security issues with the text protection or anything like that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set up this page to fit on a standard printer size piece of paper. So the first thing I want to do, yesterday we had our rulers turned on. If you don't have rulers turned on, you can do Command Option Shift R or turn on rulers under the view menu here. And you remember yesterday we left them in points because we were working on a screen layout. I'm going to right click on the ruler and change that over to inches or centimeters if you are using a metric system. So 8.5 inches wide is a sheet of paper by 11 tall. You can see I can make this any size I want. I can make this really big, and it really hasn't given me any page margins or anything. If I go to File, Page Setup, and I make sure that I'm specified to say letter size, portrait orientation, then what I can do is under my View menu, I can turn on page margins, and you can see right away that it's given me, this is non-printable space over here. And then I can also go to page breaks. And what that'll do is give me a little dotted line across the bottom here that tells me where the page is going to break to a new one. Now you notice right away, okay, well this isn't exactly, the zero is here off of this, on either side. Those are the default margins that have been set up by your operating system for that particular page size. So if you had a printer that could print edge to edge, you could go in and make a custom page size within your, this is a system level thing. It's not a FileMaker thing, but you could make a page size that has no margins and scale to that. I'm going to leave it like this because this is pretty standard. I think it's like a 1/4 inch around the whole thing. Okay, so right now I'm going to leave this all kind of dragged out like that so I have a clear idea of what space that I'm working with. I know that I'm not going to use any of this space, but for now I'm going to leave it. And then here, I'm going to just simply drag in this SDA cover sheet ping image right on top, and there it is. And I'm going to kind of anchor it all the way up into the top left-hand corner. And you can see there's a little bit of sizing issue here. It's a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and resize that until I get it as big as possible while still fitting inside of that dotted line. Now you can also drag the PDF in. If you do drag the PDF in, you'll see that there's some transparency issues. You can fix those within FileMaker. But again, I recommend not doing that simply because of some of the protections that are involved with the PDF, and it will cause you issues down the road. So let me see if I can just undo to get back to where I was. I can. Okay, so I've got this roughly placed here. I'm going to go ahead then and zoom in a little bit by doing Command+, or going to View, Zoom in. And I'm going to readjust these, the size of my document to fit within the constraints of what the screen is showing me. So I got that right there. I'm going to drag this up. Oops, drag this up. And it's important that you get this bottom margin here, that you get it above that dotted line. If the margin is below the dotted line, it's going to see this as a page break, and then it's going to print a blank page after each one of your cover sheets, which you don't want. So I'm making this cover sheet as big as I can without going over the line, and then I'm going to resize this right like that. Great. So now I have my cover sheet. And just to check to make sure it works, I've been in layout mode, layout editor mode. If I do Command B, of course that goes back into browse mode. But if I do Command U, that goes into a print preview mode. And I can look at this. And then really quickly, for my case, I'm just going to say print. And then since I'm on a Mac, I can say open in preview to see the PDF. And we'll look and see if anything's wrong with it. And right away I notice, okay, well, I've got this little bit of a gray border around there, which I don't really want. I want this just to look natural, like a normal sheet of paper. So that tells me that there's something going on with the formatting within FileMaker. So I did Command L to get back into my layout editor. And I'm just going to click on my body part here, and then under my inspector, make sure that it's filled with white behind. So I'm going to do white. And then the other thing I'm going to double check to make sure of is I'm going to make sure that that FileMaker is not applying any kind of formatting to the background automatically for me. So for an example, if you had a PDF report with several lines in a spreadsheet, you might want them to be alternating, white, gray, white, gray, white, gray. So to check that, I can do that two different ways. I can click on the body part again and then choose alternate. See, there's a little bit of a gray there. I'm gonna make that white, or active, and see there's that gray again, and make it white. So now no matter what, it's gonna show up with white behind it. Or if I want to disable that completely, which is probably the better option for this particular layout, I'm gonna right click out here anywhere in empty space, go to Layout Setup, and then under Views, oh wait, what did I do wrong? Oh, I'm sorry, I'll go to Part Setup. And then under the body part, I'm going to uncheck the boxes that says use alternate and active row states. So now it'll just kind of ignore anything that was in there to begin with. So now if I go to preview again and I make this a quick PDF, hey, that looks a lot better. It looks like I got a little bit at the bottom there. I'm not going to worry about that for now. I need to play around with my margins and stuff, but you get the idea. So great, I'm able to generate this PDF. So now I need to go ahead and start putting my fields onto this document, putting the fields that we made before over onto this. So let's go ahead and start at the top. This will be a little tedious at this first one, but then what we'll do for the other ones is we'll copy paste the layout in and then just move the fields around onto the other cover sheets. So it'll actually be relatively easy. So just like I did before, I'm only going to drag the first one in. If you don't have this field picker over here, you can do Command or Control K to get it. And I've got my contract start date, and you can see this kind of looks like a computer entry field. It doesn't look like a natural text field on a PDF. So if we remember, we looked at styles yesterday. I'm going to see if I can find one that looks good for that. And I think probably transparent centered is what I want. And then I'm going to just make some manual adjustments here. I'm going to get rid of some of the padding in it. I'm going to resize it down to just be one line. Maybe make the text way smaller so it fits in there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And center it there. Good. And what I'll do is, no line, no fill. Great. I'm going to just create a new style for that, and I'm going to call it print field. And kind of resize this around to fit. And then what I can do is just kind of pop into browse mode real quick and see how it's looking, how it's fitting in there. It does give you this little dotted line that shows you the baseline of your text field, so you can kind of hover that right above your the line on your PDF, just like that. Great. So now it's as simple as, now that I've got that field laid out like that, I'm going to copy paste it and just double click on it to change what the contents are for it. Producer name. Here's something we didn't look at yesterday, and that was the designer name thing. So obviously, if you're creating this for yourself, then your designer name is never going to change. So actually, we didn't even make a designer name field yesterday. So you could really just come in here with a text box and put your name in, like that, and have it hard done onto each one of your layouts. Or what you could do is you could make it a field and then have it autofill your name each time. Any of those things are possible. So it really depends on how you're working. For now, I'm just going to leave my name like that. Let's see, it was 12-point font, I believe. We could do something like that. Just going to put it there. And you can choose if you want to left align these, center align them, however you want to do it. Show name. And I like to leave these boxes and make them take up the whole space whenever possible. Reason being is because you never quite know what, if you have a long show name or something like that, you want to have the space for it. One of the things FileMaker doesn't do is dynamically resize text within a box. So like if you're working with an interactive PDF and you start typing, usually the text can get smaller for you. Unfortunately, that is not a thing FileMaker can do. Now you can script it. You can do different things to change the font size automatically. For this particular thing, I've never had to deal with that. It just has never become an issue. So I'm not going to go over that today. It is possible, but all right. Number of seats. You notice I'm skipping over these checkbox things for right now. We're going to get back to those in 1 second. And designs are due. And what I'm doing is I'm dragging the fields into place roughly, and then I'm clicking and using my arrow keys to make those fine adjustments. First performance. And of course, there's lots of fields that we made yesterday that we don't necessarily need for this particular layout. Okay, contract fee. Fee total. Now, actually goes down here. You can see now why I labeled these fields the way I did and how I kind of differed from what I had done in the first 2 chapters of this series with my lighting stuff, just because there's these certain types of information, and I just think it's quicker to find it when you do it this way. Contract fee, great. And then we've got AWC amount. And again, here's a repeat, closing date. So I'm just going to copy paste my closing date field onto the cover sheet. And then we've got our pension. That was what? Benefits pension. Double check when you're doing this that you're putting the right ones on the right line. So the beginning of 2020, I had kind of redone this database a little bit that I use for this, and I accidentally reversed the health and pension thing, and I sent out 2 contracts with them reversed. And luckily, we caught one of them in time. The other one was just a mess because they had to send checks. It was just a thing. So just be careful. Make sure you put the right ones on the right lines. Okay, and then down here, we have signature, which we'll leave blank. We'll have print name. That's my name, so I'm going to leave it. The date, I'm going to leave. The address we'll want. So I've got designer address 1. And really, in this particular case, again, I could hard code this. I could just put the text on that box if I wanted to, because my address isn't going to change. Or at least I don't think it will in the next little bit. But we'll put the fields in for now. Designer phone. And designer email. Okay. So the next thing I want to look at, we skipped over a couple of things. We skipped over the employer identification number. We skipped over all of our different radio boxes. And we skipped over the producer and rider information here. So first I'm going to go up here to the EIN. So if you remember, we didn't make an EIN field in our contracts database because we said, well, the EIN is linked over to the producer or to the client, so I don't need to put that information in each time. I should just have it be able to reference whoever the producer was. And you can absolutely do that. So I just put a field there and I double clicked on it. And instead of getting a contracts table field, I'm going to switch over to clients and I'm going to say client EIN. Just like that. And you can see these 2 little colons before the field name. That basically just denotes for us that this field is coming from a referenced, or excuse me, a related table and not from the active table of our current layout. So I'll do the exact same thing then for the signatory name, the person who signs your contracts. Email. You can almost kind of think about these fields as kind of like being a little window into the information from the other table. Careful not to use the word portal, because portal has other meanings within FileMaker that we're going to do a little bit of tomorrow. So we'll call it a window for now. Okay, so before I go on to do my radio boxes, I want to look and see what this is looking like to make sure that it's looking right and that there's no, issues with it or anything like that. So I'm going to hit Command B, as in Bravo, to go back into browse mode. And you can see, okay, this is looking pretty good. Everything's it's on the lines properly. There's no EIN here, I think, because we didn't specify an EIN for that person, but you see this other information is there, which is good. Okay, what do I need to change about this? Well, right away I've noticed that, okay, maybe I want to have these be, have decimal places in them. I probably don't need the dollar signs because there is a dollar sign already in front of that line. So let's just go ahead and add decimal places. To do that, I'm going to do Command L again to get back into layout mode. And I'm going to hold down Shift and click on all of my various currency fields. And then in my inspector here under Data, I'm going to leave, actually, I'm going to change the format over to decimal and have a fixed number of decimals be 2. The reason I didn't change it to currency, if I change it to currency, it's going to give me the dollar sign or the euro sign or whatever your currency marker is, and I don't want that. I just want it to be 2 decimal places. So, great. Okay, this is all looking good. Great. Let's go ahead then and take a look at excuse me. I need to open up my key here really quickly. Stand by. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to add, go ahead and deal with these radio checkboxes right now. So remember yesterday we played around with conditionally hiding and showing different fields based on what design category the thing was. We played around with that with our costumes versus scenic scope entry boxes. So basically I'm going to do the exact same thing. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to make a little text box and I'm going to put a little X in that text box. Make it nice and small. Basically make it the right size to fit over top of these empty boxes. So in my case, it's basically the same thing, a size 12 font. I'm going to make the bounding box around it as small as possible. And then I'm just going to copy paste this X and I'm going to put one in each box. Like so. It's a little off center. So is that one and that one. Okay. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, because really the only, well, no, actually these all need to be individual. So I'm going to click on the first one and say scenic. And I'm going to, under my inspector, under data, we're going to go back to this hide object when calculation. And I'm going to click on the little pencil to specify it. And really all I'm going to say is, where is it? That's meta, right? So we called it meta design category does not equal scenic, in quotes. So it's going to hide this X whenever design category does not equal scenic. Click OK. And I'm going to take the text from this hide object one and I'm going to copy it, because then what I'm going to do is just come across here really quickly and paste that in to each thing. Now, of course, I could have done that once and then gone back and just changed it. That would have been a valid choice, but here we are. Sound, projection. It's important to keep in mind this is, again, you're specifying a calculation for when it's being hidden, not when it's being shown. That's why we use the does not equal instead of the equals. Okay, so let's look at that real quick. Great, this was a costume contract, so it looks like it did it properly. If I were to, let's go back over real quick to my data entry, and if I were to change this over to be a lighting contract, I go back to my SDA cover sheet, Yep, that worked. Okay, so now you're seeing it's only showing the X of the particular contract that it is. So that's what we're looking for. And you probably would imagine then that for this scenic lighting sound projection, we will do basically the same thing. We're going to put an X here on single set, and we're just going to change the calculation over to be, what is that? Show, what do we call it? Show set type does not equal single set. And I'm just going to copy paste this whole X over to unit set. And multi-set. Okay, so now if I go back into browse mode again, yep, unit set, that looks right. Of course, I can't click on these to change it. In theory, once we get here, we'll never actually look at this layout again once we get it set up. It'll just be used to generate this PDF in the background. So you could, the data entry page we made before, you could drop those fields, with the drop downs and everything right over top of this cover sheet if you wanted to. I like to have it separate just because, again, we have all of that other information in there. But there's nothing stopping you. You could use this image as a background for your data entry page, make these calendar fields, do all that kind of stuff. Of course, I can come in here and click and edit, but anyway. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is look at this costume calculation stuff. So remember, we set up our costume field, our costume quantity field, to instead of being a value list with these three options, we made it a number field. So you can actually specify exactly how many costumes there are in your show. Again, both of those options are valid. I like to do it this way so that at the end of the year, you could say, okay, I designed X amount of costumes this year. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy paste this X over into that box. And we're just going to do a slightly more complicated calculation here. So I don't want to see this, this checkbox if, let's see, where is it? Show number of costumes is greater than 20. That's pretty easy, right? But I also don't want to see it if the type is not costume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this first condition in brackets, and I'm going to say and where is it? Meta design category does not equal costumes. So this is basically saying to hide this field when the number is under 20 and the, excuse me, this should be an or, not an and, or the design category does not equal costumes. Okay, so now let's check that real quick. Great, doesn't show up there. But if I change the category, go back to my data entry. If I change this back to costume, and I say I have 10 costumes, now in theory, that should show up. It did not. Why didn't it show up? Let me look at my key over here. Stand by. Greater than 20. Let me get rid of this for 1 second and do a little bit of troubleshooting. Okay, so I did something wrong there. For now, I'm going to leave it. We'll come back to that other thing in a second. So right now, I'm just going to leave it as contracts hide object when the costumes are under 20. Okay, so then for 21 to 30, it's a little more complicated than that. So what I'll do is I will copy paste this in. Oops. Actually, I'll do the 31 or more first because that's another easy one. and we'll make this hide it when let's see, is less than 31, right? Yep. So I'm hiding this one when contract's number of costumes is under 31. So here it should not show up. What am I doing wrong? Stand by. Oh, I'm just confused about about hiding and showing again. So the actual calculation here that works, I'm going to say not. So it's going to, I'm kind of doing a double negative thing. Not contracts. This is the wrong field. I copy pasted it in from my thing here, but here we go. This is the right one. So when it's not under 30, it's not going to be shown. All right, does that make sense? I feel like I'm being confusing. Okay. Anyway, that's the right one. Okay. And then for my middle one here, I basically have to define two conditions. One for the lower number and one for the higher number. So I'm just pasting in what I had from my other thing here, and I'm going to change these fields over. Number of costumes. So basically I just had to negate the whole thing and put a not in front of it. And then for my first one, great. Sorry. Okay. Why can't I ever seem to find this? Okay, number of costumes. All right, sorry about that, folks. Back into it. Great. So, that's good. That's good. Okay, that works. So now what I want to do is get a little smarter again with when these are shown or hidden based on what type it is. So obviously I don't want this set thing to show up when the type is costumes. So I'm going to, again, I'm going to wrap this first condition in brackets, and I'm going to say or, and then another set of brackets, meta, I can never find it, meta design category equals costume. Okay, so now when I look at this again, that's disappeared. It's gone. And again, we could script it so it actually would clear it out, and that would be the best practice. We'll probably get into that a little bit more tomorrow. I'm trying to stay away from scripts for this initial thing. But I'm basically just going to I'm going to copy this here and put it at the end of each one of these conditional statements that I just made. Like that. And like this. Right. So now these will never show up as long as the type is costume, and we want to do the same thing to the costume ones for the other type. So let's go back to our data entry for a second. We're going to change this back over to a lighting contract with a multi-set. Go over to our cover sheet, and you can see multi-set is there, but it's still showing us that 1 to 20 costumes. So we're just going to make it so that that doesn't happen. So I'm going to wrap this first one, this whole thing here in parentheses, do another or, but now I want to hide it when it does not equal costume. Oops, I accidentally pasted something in there. No, I did it right. Okay. Look at it again. There we go. Now it's working properly. And we'll do the same thing here. Does not equal costume. Now, again, this is one way of doing it. We do have an underlying issue with doing it this way, and that is that data still does exist. So in tomorrow's session, I will show you how to make a script that will automatically clear out some of those things if, let's say that you accidentally click costume but move over to lighting. It would fix that. I'm not spending a lot of time on it today just because chances are if you're doing this, most of the people watching this probably work in one area. And so it's probably not really that much of an issue for you, and you probably don't even have a design thing. You might, maybe you just put an X by lighting because you're a lighting person, so you're always doing lighting contracts. So there's that. Okay, one last thing to do here, and that is the rider attached. So I'm just going to copy paste one of my X's again. I'm going to put it one on yes. And I'm just going to wipe. And for my calculation, you remember yesterday we made a rider field. It was rider terms. So what I want FileMaker to be able to do is to automatically say yes or no based on if I have data in that field. So let's see, if the rider is attached, it means that there is data in that field. So for a yes condition, I want to say is empty rider terms, just like that. So basically what it's saying is it's going to hide this field if rider terms is empty. Is empty is a FileMaker function. So start typing is empty and then contracts rider terms. And then for the no, I'm basically just going to do the opposite of that. And there's two ways I could do that. I could do a whole pattern count thing, or I could just say not is empty and just negate it like that. So now rider is attached because I have terms in there. If I were to come back over to my data entry, let me zoom out a little bit, it's aggressively large, and I delete everything from that field, I go back to my SDA. There we go. Now it says there's no rider attached. So it's a nice little error checking thing. So you don't have to remember to check that little box. As long as if you've typed anything in that rider field, it's automatically going to check it for you. Lovely. Okay. So the next thing we will look at is we're going to duplicate this. Let me just double check one more time, make sure everything looks good here. And it does. Oh, I need to put my name down here. Great. I'm going to leave the signature and the date fields blank. If you wanted to, you could take put an image of your signature in there so it always signs it, and you could put in the current date here so it would always do that. I personally like to sign them separately, that's just a personal preference, but you could absolutely have that signature image there. If you wanted to. Okay, so let's go back into our layout editor for a moment, and I've got the SDA cover sheet. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to then rename my duplicate to UPA cover sheet. Just like that. And then I'm going to open it. And then of course right away it's the exact same, right? Because we haven't changed anything about it. Before I go on, I'm going to close the SDA one so that I don't accidentally edit the wrong thing. I've done that plenty of times. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back into layout mode, and I'm going to start editing this. First thing I'm going to do is delete the background image, and I'm going to move. I'm just going to take all these fields. I'm just going to take all these fields and drag them over here into unused space so I have them. And then I'm going to drag my project only, I said UPA, I meant POA, but anyway. I'm going to drag this cover sheet over into the space, just like that, make it the right size. And, in looking at this, you probably actually could crop this image to make it a little bit bigger. So you could definitely do that if you wanted to. Switch this back over to inches. And then right away, a couple things, like all of these are in the exact same places for the most part. So I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to send this to the back, arrange, send to back. I'm going to drag these all back over where they were. It's all pretty much the same, all right? And then I can start dragging some of this other stuff over too. These are going to go right back where they were. Zoom in a little. So really, all that hard work we did is really only for that very first very first one. We don't have to do a whole lot of work on these other ones. EIN, show name, venue, number of seats, opening or commencement. And so far, again, there's been no real change in any of these fields that we've needed to deal with. And I've got all this conditional formatting, or excuse me, conditional hide shows already set up, so I can just drop those right on there. Put my name there. Designs are due. Tech start. Tech ends. Closing. Okay, so now we're starting to see a couple of things that we don't have in our other agreements. You know, there's not really an AWC advance in this particular agreement. I'm going to delete that field. We don't have. Oops. You know, let's say, well, you know, we're going to do AWCs, but let's assume this is nonprofit, so it's going to come out on the date closing for AWC, AWC amount, something like that. But there's no thing here for first performance. That's not really something that is on this cover sheet. We don't have those same questions about how many costumes, how many sets, or what kinds of sets, etc. And we have the fee total. We have contract fee. So probably fee total is what we want here. And also here. So the way that the project only agreement works is you can set up your payments in two ways. One of them, which is a third, or you can also do it where you're getting daily pay, weekly pay, hourly pay, etc., etc. So I'm going to just copy paste this total field to either one because it's both going to be the same amount, right? And then we're going to have to create some other fields to show information here. So I'm going to go into my database manager by doing Command-Shift-D, and I'm going to make some, let's say, fee underscore POA underscore, and then we'll say this is a third, right? Because we need a third of each one of these things. This, you know, we're not actually putting necessarily our own data into these fields. It's going to be a calculation. It's going to be a third of that total. So I'm just going to say calculation, and that's going to be fee total divided by 3. And then, of course, we want to make sure it's stored as a number and unstored, or calculated as a number and unstored. So now I can put that field that I just made here. Where is it? Fee POA third. And really, it's going to be the same amount each time, right? So I don't have to. I don't have to make 3 separate boxes unless for some reason it was not an even split. Okay, so now when I look at that, you know, I'm down a penny there, so you could get, you know, you could do some math to get it to calculate properly and add that. I'm not going to worry about jumping into that for today, but you get the idea of how that calculation works. Okay, so we have that, or we have these over here, where we have daily, weekly, you know, and then the rates for those particular things. Now, right away, using the lessons that we learned on the previous cover sheet, where we want to show and hide certain fields depending on, you know, let's say what kind of contract, if it's scenic, costume, and lighting, now I'm starting to notice that we're probably going to have to also have an option to choose our payment schedule. So we could say, let's see, we'll call this on the left here payment schedule A. We'll call this over here payment schedule B. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new field, and this is going to be another meta field. And it's going to be meta payment schedule. Okay, so now I'm going to just pop open a new window and go back over to my data entry thing here. On this data entry page, I want to be able to specify what that payment schedule is. So I'm just going to grab Let's see, this was a number field. I'm going to grab this. Pay schedule. And going to link that here. And then, of course, I could make that a value list if I wanted to. I know I always want it to be A or B, so I could say A, B. Oops, accidentally created a blank one, A and B. And then I can come back over and make this a pop-up with payment schedules. So now I say, okay, I want this one to be an A, or I want this one to be a B. Doesn't make any difference of what we're looking at on screen here, but where it will make a difference is how we choose to show or hide these boxes. So for example, I'm going to grab all of these boxes right here, and I'm going to say hide these objects when payment schedule equals B. Just like that. So now when I go back into browse mode, you see they're not showing up. If I come over here and I change the payment schedule to A, now they show up again. Great. So now I start to look at this. Okay, well, I need to go ahead and add probably a couple of fields, a couple more fields for these various types. So I'm going to say, oops, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say fee, POA, payment frequency for daily or weekly. That's going to be a text field. POA, weekly, we'll say rate for a week, rate for a hour, rate for OT, fee, POA, payment periods, we'll call that. So, for how many work days or weeks. So what I've noticed now, as I've started to lay these things out, is that this fee total field that I had before isn't going to work for this because it's, we're using a separate calculation for that. So there's two ways I could go about doing this. I'm going to do probably the simple way first, and then later on I'm going to show you a new scripting thing, and then we could come back and potentially change this. So for now, I'm just going to make this a new field. I'm going to say fee POA B total, and that's going to be a calculation. Actually, that's going to be challenging. I'm gonna leave it for now. I'm just gonna leave it without that for now, and I'm gonna get into that later because that's gonna take up more time than I had planned on doing today. But you get the idea for right now where we're going. So now I'm just gonna come in here and I'm gonna add these boxes over into this weekly rate, and then of course I'm gonna change the conditional show hide to A. Hourly. And with the OT, you could also, you could make that a calculation field if you want. It's always going to be time and a half, for example, of your hourly rate for overtime. You could make that calculation happen. Totally up to you. So the problem with calculating this total is that there's different conditions involved, if it's daily, if it's weekly, if it's whatever. And so it gets a little bit harder to calculate. We have to use what's called a case function for that. And I'm just not quite ready to show that yet. Payment frequency, no, payment periods, great. And then I'm gonna take some X's here. Oops. I don't typically use this cover sheet for anything. I try to do all of my theatrical shows on a SDA cover sheet because there's an actual contract involved with that. project only stuff, a couple like one-off dance shows or something like that, I'll use it for. But I try to stay away from this contract just because it's there, or this cover sheet, because there's just not as many built-in protections, because there is no contract behind it. It's your own agreement. Okay, so I'm going to hide this when payment frequency equals weekly. Just copy paste over here to daily. Okay, so this cover sheet is just about done now. And you notice I can switch back and forth between the SDA and the UPA. It's using the same information. And we will get a little, we'll get smarter with this in a second. Obviously you're not going to generate an SDA and a POA cover sheet for the same show. So we're going to add a thing where it's going to be smart enough to know which one you want. So if we go back over here to our data entry page, we're going to add a new field. I'm going to open up our database manager again. This is going to be another meta field. And this is going to be meta USA type. So this is what's going to specify to FileMaker, is this an SDA contract? Is this a POA contract? Is this a LORT contract? Et cetera, et cetera. Also, if you're getting confused because these things are out of order, if you click on the field name header here, it'll resort them again by alphabetical order, which is a good way to go. Okay, so then we'll do the same thing again here. And I probably want to put some of that stuff like that up towards the very top. That's information that I need to know before I go and start filling out all my information about the show. So I'm going to move all this down and maybe put pay schedule could go here. But something like contract type, that's the first thing I'm going to want to specify. And I'm going to say meta USA type. And as you might imagine, we're going to create a value list for that. And we're going to say USA types. And what do we have? We have an SDA, we have a POA, and we have a LORT. Lovely. And then I'm just going to link this over here to that USA types. And now we can choose these things. So obviously it's not doing anything yet. We're going to get there in 1 second. But you get the idea of where we're going, I hope. So I'm going to make this an SDA contract. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some buttons that will automatically pop open the right contract for you based on that. Actually, before we do that, we're going to add some of those other fields that we need over to this layout. So for example, if it's a POA, now all of a sudden we have other pieces of information that we need versus an SDA where we've already laid out all the SDA stuff. So I'm going to go back into layout mode here. I'm going to move writer terms down. I'm going to take all of this money stuff. I'm going to move it off of my screen for a second. What I want to do is I want to have, let's see. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave them on there. I'm just going to move these down. These are kind of my overall things. And I'm going to just kind of add those other fields that we created before. So I've got POA, where are we at here? Payment frequency. I'm going to kind of just make them in their own little area over here. So I've got frequency. I've got periods. And then I've got some rate information here. Let's say hourly rate. Is it daily is the other one, right? No, weekly. That. Right, so now I have those fields in here, and really this frequency field, that could be a drop down as well. So we're going to do a value list for that, and we'll call that POA frequency. that, and then we'll link this over with a pop-up menu, POA frequency, like so. Great, looks good. And then of course what we can do is we can grab all of these things and we can hide those boxes when the meta USA type does not equal POA. So now, because this is an SDA contract, those don't show up. If I switch it over to a POA contract, now those things do show up. And then, of course, I could also then do the exact same thing and hide some of these other fields that I'm not using for a POA. This will be the same thing here. Great. So now with this, I can choose which payment schedule I want. I can choose my frequency. I can do all these things. I will add to my list the auto calculation of the fee total for that. I just need to sit down and do the math, and I don't want to do that live on air. So, okay, so we've got this stuff done. Let's go ahead and we're going to add a couple of buttons now to go ahead and jump us over to that particular contract that we need. So I'm going to go back into the layout editor. I'm going to copy paste one of these pretty arrow buttons that we made before. And let's just, maybe we'll make it a PDF icon, and we'll change it so it has text below it, and we'll call this, put CS for cover sheet there. We've got a lot of extra padding here that we don't need. Maybe we make that a, whatever color that is, that blue button like that. I'm just going to put it there, put it anywhere for now. And of course, then I'm going to say do nothing for the moment. So this will be our first adventure with a script in this particular chapter. So far we've done everything that you've seen without writing any actual scripts, but I want to go ahead and do that real quick to make this button work. So what I will do is I'm going to open up my script editor, and that's Command-Shift-S. And see there's a blank window right now. I'm going to click on New, and it's gonna ask me for a name. So I'm going to call this Go to Cover Sheet. And this will actually be a pretty simple script. The cool part about FileMaker scripting is that you basically just start typing what you want, and it autofills for you what it thinks you mean. It can be complicated at times and confusing at times, but as soon as you start learning more and more of the various syntax, it gets a little easier. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to set a variable, and that variable is going to be type. Now, in FileMaker, you can have two different kinds of variables. There's a local variable, and that's denoted with a single $sign. That basically means that variable will exist just for the duration of this script. Or you can make a global variable by putting two $signs in front of it, and that will remain available to you throughout your entire session. Global variables get cleared out every time you close the file, but as soon as it's defined again, it'll stay until you clear it or you close the file. And so the value for that type is going to be meta USA type. So basically all this script step is doing is it's saying take whatever's in the contents of this box and throw them into the variable of type. Now I'm going to do some if-then logic. So I'm going to say if type equals POA, and then else, oh, no, not else, else if type equals SDA, else if type equals LORT. And then basically anything that I want to have happen, if any of these conditions are true, I would put here in between these. So for a POA, for example, I want to open a new window, and then I'm going to click the little gear icon, and I can say using layout. I need to change that over to POA, but you get the idea there. Or let's say else if type is SDA, then I want this to open up my SDA cover sheet. Just like that. I don't have a LORT one yet, so I'm going to leave it like that. So now I'm going to come back in here to my layout editor. I'm going to double click this button, and instead of doing a single step, now I'm going to have that button perform that script, just like that. So I know this is an SDA, so now when I click on that, it opened up a new window for me with the SDA on it. If I change this over to POA type, and I clicked it, look at that. Now I've got a POA cover sheet. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, so I'm running a little long again, so we're going to go ahead and add our LORT contract in really quickly. And the reason I wanted to do a LORT contract is because it adds a little bit of a complication into some of the calculations that we have already done so far. And that complication is really in how LORT agreements handle pension. So in our SDA and in our UPAs, health insurance was 12% and pension is 9%. In the LORT contract, that rate is going up by 0.25% every year. So I'm not going to do you could get really complicated and have it automatically do it for you, if based on what year it is. But what we do need to code in there is automatically changing the pension multiplier amount there based on what our type is. So to do that, we're going to be using the case function within FileMaker. So here on your screen, I've opened up some of the FileMaker documentation, and it's so well written and so easy to figure out what you want or how to use particular functions and tools. And really, to find anything, you can just Google it. So in this case, I typed in case FileMaker, and this was the first thing that came up. So we're going to get back to that in a second, but this is what we're going to be using to help figure that out. Okay, so within my thing here, I'm going to go ahead and first, how do I want to do this? Let's go ahead and open up our database editor first, our manage database tool, and we are going to make a new field that is benefits. Is that what I called it? Benefits? Yeah. Benefits, pension percentage. And that's going to be a calculation. And now if we look at our function documentation over here, you can see for a case, basically what it is, let me type it real quick. If I type in case, it's asking you for, okay, the first test, and then what do you want it to do? And then you can put all kinds of different, basically, it's almost like an if-then kind of thing, or a default. In my particular instance, I'm only doing one test. I'm testing to see if, meta USA type equals LORT. And if it does, then I want the field to be 0.10. Assuming that we're in 2020, unfortunately. And then otherwise, we're going to have a default result. So I actually don't need all this other test stuff here. I need just that one semicolon, get rid of this bracket, and then we'll say 0.09. So basically what I've said here is if meta USA type equals LORT, then I want this field, this benefits percentage, to equal 0.1. Or 10%, and if it doesn't equal LORT, I want it to be 9%. Storing as a number, do not store, or excuse me, calculating as a number and not storing it. Great. So then what we'll need to do under here, this calculation field that we made before, this benefits pension, instead of this being hard-coded as a 0.09, now I'm going to do my total fee times benefits pension percentage. Just like that. And you can see, where is it? Pension is 90% because this is POA. If I change this over to LORT, my pension amount just went up because I added another, 1% to it. So using this same case function, earlier, we were talking about calculating the total based on which contract it is for this stuff. I would use this case function to do that. I just need to spend some time actually coding that out, so I'm not doing it live in front of you, but you get the idea. Maybe you can play with it yourself and see if you can figure it out. But right away, now I've basically, I've figured out what that pension needs to be, and I could even get creative if I wanted to show that percentage on here. I could, do something like this. Maybe put it next to my pension fee. Come on. Like that. Oops, I don't want it to be $1. So now you can see it change depending on which kind of contract you have. Just like that. Okay. And then we can go ahead and add the LORT cover sheet as well. Let me close some of these windows. Is that the only one? Yes. I'm going to go to my layout manager again. I'm going to rename this over to POA so I don't get confused. And I'm going to duplicate this and call it LORT cover sheet. Just like that. And just like I did before, I'm going to delete my background image. I'm going to grab all of these fields, and I'm just going to hold down Shift and move them over like that. And I'm going to drag my LORT cover sheet image right on in there, like so. Yeah, I would recommend, and I apologize, I should have done this before today's class. I would crop these images to get rid of some of this white space. So you can do that though. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time right now because I've only got 10 minutes left relaying all these fields out, but you get the idea of how this will work. We will really, let's see, the only other things we're going to need to add here, we will need a stage category field. You'll need a, we've already got these residence days thing. We already calculated that, so we could use that here. Reimbursable expenses, that'll be a new field, and transfer, that'll be a new field. And then other than that, we'll have to make some new calculation fields as well based on, quarter payments, half payments, stuff like that. I would not recommend, social security number, if this is your first LORT contract, I would just handwrite that on. I wouldn't code that in any way because there's not really any security in what we're doing right now. But yeah, you get the idea. So I'm not going to lay these all out, but you absolutely can on your own time if you're doing LORT contracts. So you can use basically all of the same stuff that we have just done. You can use these for really any kind of contract that the union has. And the way this is working is, again, like in my data entry page here, I'm specifying which type I'm using. In the background, technically, it's making a cover sheet for all of those various types, but I'm never going to export or never going to print the ones that I don't want. So hopefully that makes some sense. The last thing I want to show you today is how to generate the rider. And this is also very, very simple. So I'm going to put in, these are going to be our rider terms. I'm just going to copy, paste a bunch of empty text there like that. And really it's as simple as creating a new layout. And let's say maybe we'll make a new folder for that, and we'll say riders. And I'm going to make a new print layout, and we're going to call, I'm going to make this an SDA rider. Now you could have one rider type for all of your various types of contracts if you wanted to, or you could split it up. Totally up to you. I'm gonna split it up for now. So I'm doing printer report, and again, I am not gonna have anything. I'm gonna start with just an empty field or an empty screen. I don't want to specify anything at all yet. Just like that. And now I can start coming in here and I can lay this out how I want. I can create a header. I can create a footer, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see, let me go back over here. Just going to grab some boxes. And this is where maybe having, we put in the, remember yesterday we put that logo field in there. Maybe we put the logo on the rider, stuff like that. I like to spell out some of the terms, so you could maybe have, you could say, obviously you want the rider terms on there. Where is that? It's right here. Of course, it's going to show up, and you can size that however you want. Let me open up. Where is it? No, I'll just show you. So you can put the rider terms on there, lay them out however you want. Maybe we put our show logo on there, something like this. Now that's showing up. All kinds of options there. The other thing you can do is, so far we've been playing around with just putting the fields onto our individual layouts. We can also kind of do like a merge kind of thing like you would if you were typing, let's say, in a Word document or something like that. So I could just make a text field, let's say, and I could say, this is a rider to the Wood and what is it? Producer contracts. Producer, oops, contracts. Producer name for contracts. Wrong way. So I'm able to put, if I do it in the double carets like that, I can actually put inline, I can put the text from that, from those fields. Show name. Just like that. There are times where this is great and times where this sucks. Where it sucks is if you have, for example, the number of seats field. Let's say you have, 50 seats in your theater. That's a 2-digit or a 2-character field. But to type that out, you're taking up all of this space. And FileMaker doesn't really do a good job, of formatting that when you're in layout mode like this. So there are times where you're going to want to lay out something like that with the actual text fields put in line into different text boxes. And other times where you can put a merge field in like this. But you get the idea. Just like that. And so, yeah, so you can make this as pretty as you want. Let me open up real quick. I'll show you mine just because I'm running out of time. I don't want to spend a ton of time doing this. Contracts, there we go. Oops. Great, so here's a contract I did a couple years ago, and this, you see, I got a little bit more in depth. I started tracking transactions and stuff, but I did, let's say here's a rider. Here's what the rider looked like for me. I put in there, I had my logo, I had the show logo. This had some, again, this used a combination of text fields and of fields and also inline merge fields like this. Just like that, so this, you can make it look as nice as you want with those objects and stuff. So that is that for today. I think I've only got 3 minutes left. The only thing I didn't get to today, and I will move to the top of tomorrow, is now, we created this button to be able to open up the cover sheet. Now we need to look at, okay, how can we print this? How can we automatically generate a PDF? How could we make a PDF that will automatically append the cover sheet and the rider together? All of those things are possible and really easy to do with scripting. So that'll be at the top of the day tomorrow. And then also tomorrow, we will go through and start looking at how we can aggregate the data a little bit more and calculate our total health contributions for the year, our pension credits for the year. We'll look at maybe making that client database thing a little bit nicer. If you look at mine here, I started working on, company list. This is obviously, this was an experiment that I did that I kind of abandoned. But you've got projects in there, types, all this kind of stuff you can do that just takes time. I even started I was going to start tracking, finances per show, and I just didn't really stick with it, but you get the idea. So if there's any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I will see you all again tomorrow, same place, same time, and we will wrap this up. Unless other things come up that you want to learn about when it comes to this. But I hope that at this point you've kind of gotten an idea of what you're able to accomplish with it. And I'd love to see what you're creating. I'm doing this very quickly, and I'm not making necessarily the nicest looking layouts. The one I just showed you there, it looked a lot nicer. So show me what you're making. Let me see what it looks like, and I'd love to see that. So again, I'm going to hang out for a couple minutes. If you have any questions, please shout them out. One thing I should show real quick, we never updated this script to have a LORT type to it. So if I go back into my scripts editor again, it's really as simple as just copy pasting this new Windows script here and retargeting, retargeting the right layout, just like that. One other thing you might want to look at when you do this, it's kind of annoying when you click it, it opens it right over the top of your existing window. So there's an option in here where you can offset it a little bit. So maybe we like offset it 50 points from each one, 50 points from the top. This is from the top left-hand corner of your window. Oops. Like that, save it. And now it'll open up in clearly a new window. And really, you could even get more creative with that if you wanted to. You could have it automatically not show you the toolbars, for example. So now it looks a little bit more like that. And tomorrow we're going to go over how to get rid of some of this other white space, and again how we can append PDFs together and stuff like that. Great. All right, everybody. I hope that you had a good time today, and I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much.